chorus here, we'll just sing the chorus like we always have sung higher ground. I'm pressing on the upward way, for new heights I may, every day, still praying as I onward bound, for plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, my faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I am now. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Y'all really fine voices. Better than me. Now let's look at 609. It's one that we may not sing so often, but we need to know this tune because I'm going to use it. It's an old song. Goes all the way back to the written by Isaac Wallace. 39. I'm not ashamed of my Lord. We'll do all three verses here. I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross. Firm as his throne is from the sand, and meek and well secure, what committed to his hand, he'll run his sides in power. Then will he know my worthless name before his Father's face, and in the new Jerusalem come for me a place. And to make it that today, I'd like to do about 4 songs today, but we may not get that far. I think Kevin goes for Psalm 24. We get 2 different strings. Somebody want to read this first string and chorus, Psalm 24.
Psalm of David, there is the Lord, and in all his fullness, the world and those who dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the sea, and established it upon the water. Who may ascend to the hill of the Lord, or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, or sworn secretly, he shall receive blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is Jacob, the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, Selah.
Somebody read that.
Lift up your heads over you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is mighty, Lord, Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty and fire. Lift up your heads over you gates, lift up your everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory, the Lord of hosts? He is the King of glory.
Psalm 24, 10 verses, kind of a short psalm, and let's have a lot of meaning behind it. I was reading over this and thinking about it. Oh, yes, okay. Sure. Yeah.
I'll get it on with my glasses here. There we go. Yeah. Psalm 24, as I say, is a short psalm, 10 verses. but packs a lot of punch behind it, I guess we could say. I think you can break it down in 3 sections, verses 1 and 2, 3 through 6, and then 7 through 10. Verses 1 and 2 is showing here that the worshipers are declaring their faith that the Lord owns the whole earth and the people who inhabit it. Everything and everybody belongs to the Lord. Verses 3 through 6. In verse 3, it's worshipers are asking the officiating priest about the type of person who may enter the Lord's temple and worship him. Of course, keep in mind, I should have said this first, but keep in mind that David wrote this psalm as they was bringing the ark back to Jerusalem. And so this was kind of a psalm they wanted to sing as a celebration of the ark coming back and taking it into the, what would you call it, the temple, I guess, or whatever they've, a tent or something maybe they've made to put it in. In verse 4, we're going to see 4 things the Lord seeks from us as Christians. Clean hands, pure heart, truthfulness, and lack of deceit. Clean hands being people that can see that we're good. A pure heart would be God can see that we're good. Truthfulness, of course, is one who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. I think, and there at the bottom of the false being the person who does not worship idols, I believe. Of course, the lack of deceitfulness would be the person that does not lie. Verse 5. The one who does these things, the Lord will do good things to them, and God will save them. And righteousness means just judgment. Verse 6. This is the generation of those who seek him and see the face of the Lord. These are the people that are looking for God. And then 7 through 10, of course, it kind of repeats itself twice there, but this occurs as they're approaching the gates of the temple. And like I said, when David wrote this, it was a joyous occasion. I'm trying to think how to look at that when it says raise up the gates to lift up. I think he was thinking something this mighty, he wants it wide open for it to, I guess. I couldn't hardly get it in my mind exactly the best way to say that, but I guess he was thinking they're too magnificent maybe or something. So they needed to lift it high out of reverence for him.
If somebody comes to your door and they are kind of shady character, like you don't really swing the door.
Right.
Somebody comes in, grandma or the grandkids or something like that,
wide open. Exactly right. Exactly right.
I think that's what he's saying here. The Lord is here.
Let him in. That's right. Yeah, I think so too. I think, and we don't have to read it, but I think I found it in, where'd I write that down there? 2 Samuel chapter 6, there are verses 12 through 17. I think it's telling, if you want to read that, Sheb, you're looking up there. It's telling about David and the joyous occasion of him bringing the ark back.
And he told King David, saying, the Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with gladness. And so it was, when those bearing the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, that he sacrificed oxen and fatted sheep. Then David danced before the Lord with all his blood and linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting with the sound of the trumpet. And as the ark of the Lord came in the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leap it and whirl before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. So they brought the ark of the Lord and set it in place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had erected for it. Then David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord.
Mm-hmm. He was happy about it, wasn't he? Very happy. So keep it in mind that he was writing this for them.
That's the way of worshiping God back then. That's table. That's why we're here.
Mhm.
That's why it's a summertime, it also should be exciting table.
Mhm. Exactly. In fact, I'm gonna use that same time I have on the communion this morning and bring that point up. That's all right. Anything else? Anybody want to make a comment before we sing it? Matt? I just need to leave it on. You gonna use it, man? Oh, okay.
It's all about attitude and preparing for the heart. We come to work with the one right. We need to come with the right attitude. Now, this song really is a great song. You heard of the work, full work handles Messiah. We were thinking Messiah, we think about this song is used in a couple of syllables in the handle Messiah. You can have clean hands and a pure heart who has not lifted up its soul unto vanity or sworn deceitfully. And Lord wants us to come in with a pure heart. Right there. Look at you, look how sweet and how heavy this song. The Lord our Creator, earth and all that is contained. He has subdued within His hands, by Him is sustained. Who may approach the Lord from high and seek His holy face? Clean hands and heart He asks of us in His most holy place. We soul on a sure righteousness to stand on holy ground. For those who seek the Lord on high, His riches shall abound. Be lifted up, O ancient doors, let all earth praise Thee. Lift up your heads, O mighty gates, and let the kingdom in. Good song.
A psalm.
We'll read it first.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Psalm of David, a contemplation. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones grow old through my groanings all the day long. For the day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My vitality was turned into the drought of summer. Selah. I acknowledge my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave my iniquities and my sin. Selah. Excuse me. This is a Psalm of David, and in some of your books it may say Maskil. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right or not. To instruct one or to give instructions that people need to read or study, because in doing so it will make you wise and blessed and happy. So this is a song of David, and it's giving instructions. If you want to be blessed and be happy, here's what you need to do, David said. The first verse, first two verses are a pronouncement of blessings and on forgiving sinners. And it's real similar to that of the Beatitudes in Matthew. Blessed is he who does this, blessed is he. And David, they kind of borrowed that, I think, maybe from David, or David had the same inspiration to say that, perhaps would be a better way of saying it. Verses 3 and 4 talks about the physical and spiritual exhaustion that comes from unconfessed sin. You know, we all have heard Paul and others about throw off every weight that hinders you. And this is what it's talking about. Sin, unconfessed sin, is a weight that will weigh you down. In the Army, we used to have to sometimes go on hikes, sometimes 32 kilometers or different things. And they'd make sure you had a full ruck. They'd go through there. If you didn't have the right weight in there, drill sergeant would put some weight in there for you, or first sergeant, either one. So we all know what it's like to have to bear a weight that we don't want to have to bear. And that's what sin does to us. It weighs us down. It keeps us from going the way we should be going, or as fast as we're able to go. But verse 5 is the turning point of the psalm, and psalmist's life full of confession leads to forgiveness. The weight is finally gone. He's finally made his confession. He's finally went to God and said, God, I know I did this. I agree with you that it was wrong. I agree with you that I shouldn't have done it. And I confess of it. I won't try to do my best to never do it again. Then verses 6 through 7 is the invitation for others to praise arising from the promised new relationship with God. The love is rekindled, kind of like Adam and Eve when they sinned. What did they do? They ran and hid from God. They didn't want nothing to do. They didn't want God to find them. They were scared. But when God asked them, they confessed their sin. God made them the clothing to cover up their sin, and they had that relationship to God restored. And it's the same thing that the psalmist is talking about here. That love, that honeymoon is back. Verses 8 through 10 offers to instruct others in good life, a new way of life. David, after going through this, tries to save the others from going through the same mistakes. Kids or grandkids, we've been there, we've made the mistake. So we always try to share with them, look, don't go down the road I went. Listen to what I learned from going down there. Let me save you from trouble. Of course, we never listen to them until we've been through it on our own. And then verse 11 summons praise. This is gratitude for unmerited forgiveness of sins that only God and God alone can give. In this sermon, verse 5 is the midpoint or the hinge on which the psalm kind of swings around when the psalmist moves from attempting to cover up his own sin to confessing his sin. God, in turn, moves from judgment to redemption. He talks about having that God's hand against him, that weight pressing on him, his guilt conscience eating him. And he swings from that to God forgiving him and that load being taken off of his mind as well. The vivid metaphors that the psalmist uses throughout here, he includes metaphors like the sinner's tongue shriveling like a plant that is withered in the summer sun. We've all had a lot of experience of that with our yards and stuff here in this drought that we're going through. And he talks about the sinner's tongue is kind of shriveled up like that. And that's very much true. The first things to go when you have unconfessed sin in your life is your ability to pray. You can't pray to God in a clear conscience. You start finding excuses not to pray. And it really does hinder your prayer life. Paul says, husbands, don't become bitter in your wife, because bitterness will hinder your prayer life, will hinder your ability to pray. But not only that, but it also hinders their testimony. In a sermon I've been working on, we'll see where Abraham's testimony was hindered because of his sin in Egypt. And that's one of the first things sin will do. It'll hinder your testimony in your tongue. It talks about the threat of overwhelming flood. It compares God's wrath coming or judgment to overwhelming flood, being washed away. God's forgiveness is likened to a secret hideaway, a city of refuge. And the stubbornness of the sinners is compared to that of a horse or a mule. I don't know how many people have ever tried to lead a mule when it don't want to go. It's very hard to do. It don't want to go. It's a lot more than you, and it's going to do what it wants to. And God compares our stubbornness to hold on to sin, to not confess it, to that of a mule. And it goes through the whole vocabulary, a whole list of different words that is used for sin here in the psalm, including resistance or rebellion. It talks about transgression, that is to miss the mark, to miss the target of what God has said to set. God has said, this is my morals, this is my rules. And we don't hit the bullseye. We missed the target altogether. We're nowhere on the board. It talks about guilt being another word it uses for sin, and that which is bent or crooked. It talks about deceit, faulty or defective. I know Grandma and them, when they talked about faulty apples, I was like, well, first I go, what do you mean faulty apples? That's when apple that's rotten got a rotten place in it. But I never put that word faulty when compared, but God here does. Says, it's faulty. That's what see. Then this Psalms are the full ugliness of sin is exposed by David and shown for David. The psalmist tries to cover up his sin, that is to hide it. But in verse 5, we see that upon his confession that God does even one better. God goes and covers it over. That is, he buries it, is a better word or metaphor. God takes it away so that it cannot be raised again. Satan is called the accuser of the brethren, but when God forgives your sin, he's got nothing to accuse you for. He can't dig it back up. It's buried. It's gone. There's at least 3 theological themes here that we want to look at in this, or think about in this psalm. The first is that the nature and the effects of sin. Sin is not simply a mistake or a misdeed, but is a turning away from God, a stubbornness, resistance to God, to obeying his will. Sin thus breaks our relationship with God and leads us to punishment. When the exaberance of the situation will make it much worse. The second thing we want to look at in this theological application is the theme of confession. Full, honest admission of guilt made without excuse. Acknowledging our guilt to ourselves is a good start, but it's not enough. Confession must be made to God. Such full, honest, open confession places the sinner in God's hands and thus is an expression of trust in God. Confession of sin to God and profession of faith to God are 2 sides of the same coin. God imputes or reckons such trust as righteousness as he did with Abraham. And he still does that with us today. You can't say that you trust in or believe or have faith in Jesus Christ and then still want to hold yourself guilty to confess sin. It doesn't work that way. Either you believe in Jesus Christ, that he is atonement for your sins, and then you let go of those, or you don't believe in Jesus at all. The third thing is now the door is open for God to act on the sinner's behalf, which is the third theme of the Psalms, the free, gracious forgiveness of God, the complete eradication of sin and its effects, and that leads to new, intimate, secure relationship with God. It is the very nature of God to be not only just, but especially forgiving. Blessed indeed are those whose sins has been taken away, those whose transgressions have been covered up, buried. So now let all confess, forgiven sinners, all who have been accounted righteous by God, all who are upright in heart, rejoice, be glad, and sing at the top of your lungs their praise to God. Is there anything harder than to say that we're wrong, that we messed up, that we sinned, that I'm guilty? I think most of us probably know Fonzie from Happy Days. He could, and he never could get his mouth to make that I'm wrong and say that he was sorry. And that's a good metaphor for us. A lot of us we don't like to admit that we messed up. We don't like to go to God and say, God, I was wrong. And I don't understand why, because God knows it. God knows what we've done, whether we confess it or not. God knows exactly what we did. But we've got to get our heart and mind in saying, okay, God, I agree with you, God. It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. Confession of sin is not a popular option, especially in our society today. And it wasn't then for Psalmist. He remained silent for as long as he could till he couldn't take it anymore. But God's guilt finally took a toll on him. Guilt as it always does until confession is made to the Lord and received from the Lord. No one in today's society, nothing is ever anybody's fault. And we kind of look at that the same way too. I did this because I wasn't hugged enough. I wasn't loved enough. I did this because that. I did this because that. It doesn't work that way. You can't say that anybody ever made you sin. No one can make you sin. You chose to get upset about that. You chose to be aggravated about that. You chose to do this and that. You chose to sin. No one or nothing can ever make us sin. Satan is powerful, but he's not that powerful. We have to give in to him. But the one whose sin has been taken away, the one to whom the Lord attaches no guilt, is the one who is truly blessed. That is the difference between a happy, joyful Christian and one who is all grumpy and down all the time. One has realized and turned from his sins over to God and experienced God's grace. The other holds on to his sin, trusting in his own self-righteousness to make up to God for the thing that he done. Thank you. Yes.
I'm just going to make a comment. It surprises me sometimes that you'll hear of a bad guy who's done something wrong 30 years ago, will drive to the police station and turn to the thing. They've not been caught, they've not been warned, they've not been captured. They just confess. They say, the camera's too long, I can't take it anymore. And so they know they're going to go to jail. And they confess and they want that weight off of them, you know. And I think even bad guys that do bad stuff did that. And I think that we ought to realize you got to get better, because if you carry it around, it weighs you down. You can't ever be happy.
You can't ever enjoy the moment or look forward to a future because you're always looking over your shoulder. When are they going to come? Am I going to get caught? I know a lot of people following this thing in Bardstown about the Crystal Rogers thing, where this guy finally got arrested and is probably going to get charged. But I mean, it's just been a weight that I'm sure has been always looking over his shoulder, always, you know, and all the ones involved that helped him do it, you know. It's going to come, so you might as well just get it over with and get it out there. It's kind of like with mom and dad, you know, when you mess up at school, you know, you're always ready. Or is the teacher going to call? Can I hide it? Can I get over it? Can I sneak it by? No. You might as well just go on and tell them and get it over with, and just that way you can move on. Thank you.
I'd like to say something. Yeah. When you mentioned school, it's one of those things that whenever you do confess to what you've done, that you shouldn't have done, or whatever, you know, the child is confessing to you, you're not nearly as upset with that child as if, you know, that child can make every excuse in the book and deny what you did. But, you know, and I think it works that way as an adult. If someone does something wrong and they confess to you that they're not bad about you or whatever it is, then you're not nearly as upset with them as if they had done what I did do anything like that. If you know it was true.
Yeah. I think that, you know, as a parent, when your kid comes to you and does that, it makes you feel right. It makes you feel a little bit better. It makes you feel a little bit proud that they had enough trust in you to come and tell you, for one, and that you raised them right enough to know that they recognize this is wrong and I need to tell them. So I think you're 100% right. I agree with that 100%.
Well, one of the things that I often wonder is whenever we as adults do things like that, you know, deny things and all of this, is it because we aren't confident in ourselves and the person who has been bad or that we've been bad? Are we not confident of the relationship that we have with them? And I think it's important that as Christians we cultivate a relationship with fellow Christians that we can say we're sorry. You know,
I think a big part of it is our faith. We don't have enough faith in God that God can forgive us. Even though the word said He will forgive us every sin. But we don't have enough faith in God to be able to put that behind us, be able to carry that every day. I think the same way with faith, we don't have enough faith in people that they will have a forgiving heart to forgive us, to accept it, to put it behind us, and not just continue to have this throw up their face like it's lit with that.
also, I think we can stand that she's responsible to do a change. And a lot of people thought changes or whatever it is, that they don't have responsibility
Once you admit that you know that it's wrong, then there's no saying, well, I didn't know that. The officer did, you know that. So I agree with that.
How blessed are those who sit within whom for ministries from thee, to whom the Lord does not count sin, and in whose soul wisdom receive. When I did not acknowledge sin, my body wasted away. For his own righteous holy hand laid heavy on me night and day. When I lay on my waywardness and did not